doing a lot of, I would say, interesting on an edgy type of arts, right? So, and you had quite a long stretch of developing different skills. At this moment in time, where do you see, or how do you project the future of art combined with tech? Maybe you can also think about haptic
Yeah,
tech.
I've
How
been
do
playing
you
a lot.
project?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot with AI generative art. I call it conjuring. I don't call it creating, but I love it. It's another way to be creative, and that makes me happy. I'm not picky. I think I wouldn't want to be a commercial artist right now because I think, it in terms of being an advertising or commercial artist, where you're creating something to a brief for a client for a distinct purpose. AI creation is very easy to do that, and you won't need nearly the teams, and you'll have 100 times the output. I've seen some really interesting work. I think the next generation is 3D AI, so AI creating. I've been playing with that for about a year now. As much as there is out there, it's not that much yet, but it's coming. And I saw another announcement that there's another one coming now today. So there is a development in that direction. I think.
So you think 3D art will be prominent?
Well, I think it's hard to make VR and AR right now, right? It's hard. It takes, there's multiple programs you have to learn. It's hard. It's a lot of work to learn. And I happen to love that, but it's not easy. I think when we get to the stage where people can just use words to create 3D environments, it'll drive content. And once we have content, we'll have more people in VR. And I think that's a good thing. I think that, you can either fight it or you can join it, and it's going to happen. So you might as well learn how to do it and integrate it into parts of other things. I think, as with anything, artists take stuff and they start to learn how to do it, and then they come up with ways to use it that nobody thought of before. We're having an AOL kind of a moment, where a MySpace moment, where everybody's going to create their own 3D space from prompts. A lot of people are very angry about that. I see it as another tool, and also I see it as removing barriers to being creative. So there's people who've never been artists who are all of a sudden being able to communicate through pictures what they had in their heads. And so all of a sudden, all these people are being creative when they couldn't be before, because it takes all this time to learn how to do things. So I think that may be a good thing. It's going to be a lot more people being creative.
It's also about accessibility, right? Sharing it,
Yeah. All of a sudden, you don't need to spend 3 years learning Blender and Unity. You can just start doing it, right? So it's a shortcut to creation. And I think, we need to get more people involved in creating this stuff, and then more people will want to do it too, because we still have, we haven't reached the tipping point in terms of mass adoption where it's just so ubiquitous. I call it escape velocity. Our industry has not reached escape velocity yet, where when there's a downturn, we don't think about, well, is it going to survive? All those articles that are, oh, you think the metaverse is going to survive? Like, nobody does that about cell phones when there's a recession, right? It's achieved escape velocity. It's so ubiquitous. Televisions, radios, all the cars, right? Nobody questions, are they going to be around next year? When there's a downturn, I want to see our industry reach that escape velocity point where it's just so ubiquitous. But to do that, we need people who are involved, more people involved, not just the people who are, this is a relatively small group still. And yes, mostly gamers, but there's other stuff too, right? There's so much else you can do there.
Like what?
Well, the social aspect is for me the strongest. I think what I said before about being able to connect, I think that's the attraction of XR, is being able to connect. I have relatives all over the world. I'm rebuilding the house I grew up in VR so that we can have parties there like we used to. We're going to have VR parties. I haven't finished it. I'm about 60% of the way there. I still got some stuff to finish, but I showed it to my mom, and we sold the house 20 years ago, and she's all like, "Oh my God, like it looks so real." I'm like, "Yeah, it does, right?" I mean,
that's so cool,
powerful, right? And then my relatives in Holland, my relatives in other countries, we can all join in there together, and that's the social aspect of VR that I think is strong. I love creating in VR. So, I mean, I create in VR. I use a program that's now not supported anymore, but Adobe Medium, which I love. It's sculpting, and in VR, you're standing there, you're doing it, you're walking around it. It's just like a piece of clay without the cold, wet aspect of clay, because I was very messy and it was always cold and wet. But again, it enables so much. So those are two things I think VR is fantastic. We're also exploring things, traveling, things that you can't do so easily.
So from what I feel, what you're describing, it's more of an experience, right, than art in our classical way of kind of seeing art. So it feels like art goes into this experiential phase, right? So it's not just like an object, an artifact that is hanging on the wall of a museum that you cannot touch. You have to be so careful about it, but it's more about like some immersive experiences that we all can be part of.
Right. Well, in terms of haptics again, or touch, or experiencing feeling, right? The feeling when you're actually there. I would love, it'll happen someday. We're going to not have television, or we might still have TV, but on top of it, we'll have the Starship Enterprise, Star Trek person, can be, mapped to my actual room, and I could be sitting in the middle of the set, and then we have like theater in the round, and I can go around and sit in the command chair, or things can happen around me, right? So on entertainment, the next generation of entertainment, and it's not haptics per se, but I think haptics plays a really important role in all of that, because you need to be able, like I said, to sit, to feel, to interact with, and interacting we do with our hands, right? We talk,
right? But it's also about recreating the experiences using haptics. This is like a big area and direction, right, in terms of like experiences. But I'm wondering, and I'm also curious myself personally, because I really like art in general, whether haptics or haptic tech, right? Not haptics is a big word, right? It involves also sense of touch, which can be, conveyed through a table, right? So it doesn't have to be interactive in that way. But I'm thinking about more interactive, haptic technology that can be used to create art objects, not necessarily just to recreate experiences like a sensation of an arm or some sort of object or a chair or softness or roughness, but be a standalone piece of art, like an abstract, something that you can touch or whatever.
Like a sensory chamber. So you could
sound like a sensory artifact.
Yeah, you could stand in the middle of an installation, but you don't see it. But like a blind person, depending on where your hand goes, you could feel the surfaces and the softness and the hardness, and actually have an experience that has to do with touching and mapping that sense without the visual feedback. That'd be really interesting, actually.
Yeah, actually, I'm always in search, like whenever I'm in some new place, or like in New York, for instance, I'm always searching like for a gallery that has some sort of touch-based artifact. There are very few of them. Once I've been actually in Tallinn, in Estonia. There was this black room. Basically, you go, it's a dark room. You don't see anything. You can only touch things. They were not interactive in a way of how, like, technology wise, right? Nothing vibrates or gives you force feedback or anything, but just objects that you can touch. But still, it was already something interesting. And new experience.
Yeah, you've got me thinking, because I think it'd be fabulous to have sound and haptics be the only interaction. So if you touch something, it has a tone. Like, can you play various sounds depending on how you touch it, where you touch it, and you do that without visual input, and you're kind of standing in the middle of like a synthesizer almost, but one that's based on you interacting with it, not looking at it. That'd be cool. That'd be really fun.
Well, maybe you can start doing it.
Let's just do it. Let's just do it. I like that idea.
Exactly. Let's get together and do it.
Yeah. That's
why not? I would love to. I mean, I'm really, it's also my kind of a big, some sort of wish aside from my research activities to do something more artistic. So who knows?